Thing.
Wow, Jackie, indaba ezimnandi ke lezo. Those are really awesome news. Kodwa ke, what do you do lapha ekhaya if your matric results aren't as good as you'd hoped? Well, that's what today's show is all about. So besikhulumisana ngaleyo ndaba leyo. Kodwa ngaphambi kokuthi singene phezulu kwale nkulumo, let's find out what you had to say on the streets.
Welcome to this beautiful 2018. Congratulations for making it this far. I'm your host, Lisa M, and I'll be your street journal for today. Now, today we are talking about 2017 matric results. I mean, we want to find out what is the difference between 2016 and 2017, and where did we get it wrong, and how can we improve? Today, I'll be talking to our fellow peers about what we can do differently.
The kids don't have adequate laboratories for them to carry out experiments, to do it practically. For example, when you're doing chemistry, with mathematics as well, I think they need extra lessons, have some more teachers actually, so that they can have more time to practice mathematics, so that when it comes exam time, they are actually well prepared.
Ingane zasesikoleni ayifocus, bafocusa eyintweni eziphuma endleleni, like abanye bayadoja isikolo, abanye bahlala ema-toilet, and that's horrible. It's horrible.
Inkinga ukuthi sometimes adults they get pregnant, and then abanye like mhlambe bayabhema, then they start leaving school, abasafuna ukuqhubeka ngezifundo zabo.
Ndona bana bakufana na taxi driver nabo ba after chelede kashona so arali bana bavenda bakune eshikoloni ngori chipinga chinji ndona mwana akho chena nga chipinga baba usina thaidzo ine bori thamsi ukutanga nayo kana zwine bori kushuko muthisa mumbuloni.
I think abazali kwamele baphusha abantwana babo ukuthi ba study. Abantu abasa study these days.
Some of the comments coming from the streets, from you as a young person. But to help me take this discussion further, I'm joined in studio, I want to say a veteran because she's always here, Troy Martins, who is the spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education. And we're also joined by Renee McFarlane, who is all the way from our Cape Town studios, who represents the Equal Education. Welcome to Expressions. Renee, can you
Thanks, it's good to be here.
Excellent, excellent. And Mopahedi, you know I never fly solo. If you're wondering what's happened to my co-host Mxolisi, he is manning our social media corner, bringing some of your comments on this also important discussion. But he will be bringing some of those comments a little bit later on the show. But we're going to get straight into it. Troy, I mean, it is a stellar performance in the sense that there is some improvement, 2.6%. But I think going to our poll question, which I think is a really pertinent issue around, is there enough support for students who haven't passed, who haven't made the cut?
You know, last year, actually in 2016, the Minister launched the Second Chance Matric Support Program, and it is exactly for that reason. It really gives those learners who maybe haven't met the requirements of the National Senior Certificate that hope that they have a second chance at achieving it. So we would encourage all of those learners who didn't meet the requirements, who didn't pass, to take advantage of this opportunity and to go to their local district education office and register for the Second Chance program. It really isn't the end of the road if you don't pass. There are a multitude of options available to you, and we would encourage all learners who didn't meet those requirements to take advantage of this opportunity.
We definitely applaud the department for making those kinds of platforms available for students.
It really is so important that we want every learner to have the best opportunity that they can. And the research shows that the matric certificate is really a gateway to all sorts of opportunities, whether it's further studying, whether it's employment. It really is that document that you need to move forward, and that's why we feel it's so important that so many more people have access to it.
And I want to bring Renee into this conversation. I mean, Renee, 75.1%. Do you think this is a cause for celebration, or should we be looking more at the more meticulous issues around, is this representative of quality students that are being produced by the department? What is your take on this?
EE has consistently reminded the public that it's important to be a bit more cautious, I think, before we start celebrating, because a pass rate doesn't really tell you something unless you know how many learners were supposed to write, how many learners wrote, and how many learners eventually passed. So the matric pass rate only tells us how many of the learners who actually ended up writing matric passed matric. But it doesn't tell us a lot about all the learners who've dropped out of school since entering the school system. And that's for us a more accurate indicator of the real pass rate of this year. And if you compare the number of learners who were in grade 2 10 years ago, and you take that as an indicator of the pass rate, it's closer to 50%. And I think that that number is really important for the conversation we're having today, because it's not only learners who didn't pass this matric exam who need support and assistance, it's also all the learners who've dropped out along the way. We have about 3 million young people who are not in employment, education and training. That's a huge amount of learners who either from the DBE side or from the Department of Higher Education side need support to receive further training and aren't necessarily receiving that type of support.
And I think, Troy, I think this is where you should come in, and I want on the back of what just Renee had said. I mean, we know as well that 9 schools achieved a 0% pass rate, and obviously KwaZulu-Natal having the highest in terms of that. What kinds of interventions have you put in place to make sure you can mitigate something like this, at least in 2018?
Well, I think a 0% pass rate is not acceptable, and we really need to go back and look at what is happening at those schools.
So just to interrupt you as well, Troy, I mean, it's not the first time, though, that we are having, you know, these kinds of, numbers saying that there's 0% matric pass rate in school. So I'm trying to figure out what is different now from what you did last year that you should be obviously implementing in 2018.
So what we've embarked upon as early as 2 years ago is we're looking at the viability of schools. So a lot of these schools that don't achieve, they're your very small schools, which are unviable in many respects. They have less than 100 learners in them across a multitude of grades, sometimes from grade 1 to matric. So our schooling system is funded based on the number of pupils. So often you'll have one teacher teaching a whole school because it's a one school. It's a one teacher school. So you'll have one teacher teaching a multitude of grades, a multitude of subjects, and that's just not viable. So we have undertaken a process, and it's a long process, to close these unviable schools. But it comes along with quite a lengthy consultation process. We have to get communities on board. Often these learners will now have to travel further than they did before, so we have to ensure that transport or boarding facilities are available for these learners. But at the end of the day, they'll be in a more viable school and they'll have a better chance of success, because a lot of them are your farm schools that really have maybe 50, sometimes even less. There's been schools with less than 20 learners in them, and they are just not viable. And that's when we come with these very terrible results, because they're not actually getting taught properly.
And I think I just want to bring Renee in here quickly. I just want to find out from you, what do you think can be done to mitigate this? Because I feel like, you know, in 2017 was more or less the same type of conversation. We know what the challenges are. We know what the shortcomings are. What do you feel needs to be done to improve and not have these kinds of numbers where you have a whole entire school that has no matriculants who've passed?
Yeah, I have to say, I think it's a slight cop-out to say that most of those schools are rural schools or non-viable schools, because we see urban schools, we see larger schools where results are also poor, and it points to a broader issue than just having some schools that are too small or are quite hard to serve. And one of the issues that really needs addressing is early learning and foundation phase learning, because we know that the issues that manifest themselves in something like the matric results actually start way earlier, when learners are in the early grades, and that learning gaps already emerge there, and then just exacerbate and increase as learners move through the system. So really, I mean, if you want to compare the matric results to the recently released PIRLS results, which is an international reading literacy study, which revealed that 78% of grade 4 learners in South Africa can't read for meaning, which basically means that they can't make sense or understand the words that they are reading.
So
now, that
this
is
is definitely startling numbers, and unfortunately I had to cut Renee, but I mean, clearly it's not a simple issue, something that can be solved over a day. And I think the most important thing, I think for the matriculants, especially with this show, is to say, if you haven't passed, it is not the end of the road for you. But keep watching Expression, because we're going to be giving you more information on the light that is at the end of that tunnel. Stay with us.
I guess you're still watching your #1 Youth Current Affairs show. This is Expressions. We're discussing the 2017 matric results. Is there enough support for the matriculants abangazange bahambe kahle ku-matric last year? I'm now joined by Upenwell Maduna from COSAS. Numzan, sikubingela sikwamukela.
No, thanks for inviting us as COSAS.
Congratulations for passing grade 11.
No, thank you.
And welcome to the show. Now, mfethu njogoba besizwa ngale uTroy Martins ekhuluma ukuthi there is enough support for ama-matrics angazange pass last year. I saw you shaking your head there. Clearly you did not agree. Why?
Yes, we do not agree as the Congress of South African Students, because we are saying that there is no enough support for matriculants. And in fact, before we start with matric, as the Congress of South African Students, we have been saying that we are calling for one school, one social worker, or even 2 social workers to deal with the challenges that are facing young people in schools. But the Department of Education has failed to do that. We have been writing letters to the Minister of Basic Education and to Elijah Mhlanga, informing him that we are demanding one school, one social worker. And we are saying that we want one school, one social worker, because learners are facing many different challenges. They are child-headed families. They can't cope with stress that they receive from home. So that's why every school needs a social worker. And before we even come to them failing matric, we need to understand what is the cause for learners failing matric, because some of them fail matric because they do not receive enough social support. And the other issue that we have seen of learners committing suicide after failing matric, learners, they commit suicide because their results are being taken to the entire country through the publication of matric results before we ourselves even receive our matric results. So as COSAS, we have been saying that we do not want the publication of matric results in newspapers because it's a violation of our human right to privacy. But the Department of Education has continuously sold our matric results to these media houses that don't do anything to assist us throughout the year to pass matric. And as COSAS, we are also saying that all the companies that have been benefiting from the publication of matric results, they must take that money and reinvest it in our schools, because we do not have libraries in our schools, we do not have laboratories, we do not have enough resources, we are sharing textbooks, we do not have tables and chairs. But these media houses are benefiting from the publication of matric results, and we want anyone who has been benefiting from this illegal deal to pay back that money that they've been taking, and also to be held responsible for all the learners who have committed suicide because they did not see their names in the newspapers.
Troy, very scathing there. I'd like to know from you. Let's first begin by you responding to the claim that they haven't been really receiving any response from the department. Their cries have been falling on deaf ears.
I think that's a bit disingenuous, because I know that the Minister has met with COSAS, and on a number of occasions we've been to some of their events. So I'm a bit concerned about where that's coming from, but also just to maybe give some insight into what we are doing. We have a program that provides psychosocial services to schools. It's a new program where we actually get students to from the different universities who are studying psychology, among other things, to actually go and serve and provide that support to schools. There's a number of issues that our colleague has raised. Another one is the issue of the publication of results. And we need to reiterate that it came from a meeting with COSAS that we no longer publish names in the newspaper. So there are no names of learners. It is only the student number. It's not any kind of identification number. It is the student number, the student number and the whether they passed or not. So that is the only information that is published, and that came out of consultation with COSAS over about 3 or 4 years ago already. So it really is a process, and this is how far we've come, and maybe we need to sit down and have further engagement, because obviously we're talking past each other. But I think we also need to not blame the publication of the results for these learners who sadly take their lives unnecessarily so.
Absolutely.
We need to really, look at what the actual causes are, and that is that they didn't pass or whatever the reason may be, and
let me
provide
just, at
that
the
support.
back of that, just quickly take a few comments on my social media wall. We catch up with Garth, who says, yes, I'm happy with the results because Western Cape has come third and it is good. Odwa says, indeed, a big yes. I recommend the MEC to visit Gofimvaba. I've been there a few times, and award a sister at St. James High and Nongonyoza at Gofimvaba High for the great job. Iminyaga Ilandelana, leading the province, the Eastern Cape, hashtag excellence. And of course, there's more on this all-important discussion on the back of this. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions here on SABC1. We're discussing the also important issue around the 2017 matric results. And our poll question that we're asking you, Gochai, is there enough support for matriculants who have failed? And I'm still obviously with Troy and Renee, and we just want to wrap things up. And I think we want to just re-emphasize just what the department has available for students who have not made it. Can you just remind us again?
You know, we'd really like all those learners, some maybe failed 1 or 2 subjects, they can go to their local district office before the 19th of January and register for the supplementaries, which is part of the Second Chance program. For those who maybe who failed maybe a few years back, they can also have a second chance. There is still hope for them as well. For example, those who maybe didn't pass in 2010 or 2011, they can also register for the amended senior certificate. There's a multitude of support. It can all be found on the Department of Basic Education website, which is www.education.gov.za, and click on the Second Chance Matric Support Program, and there is so much information available and so much support, and we really want to encourage all those to take advantage of the opportunities.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And I just wanted to also give Renee just the closing comments around this issue, especially maybe around what you are doing to help matriculants who have not made it.
So as a closing comment from Equal Education side, I'd say we're looking with great expectation at the grade 1 class who's starting very soon. And really they are the learners who need our support from the time that they enter the education system. So that hopefully by the time in 12 years' time, we're looking at their matric results, we can have a full cohort of learners passing matric rather than having half a cohort left behind.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being short and sweet. A big thank you to all our guests for sharing your insight on this also important conversation. And of course, Gochaya, Expressions would not be Expressions if you were not a part of it. So this is what you would like us to cover on our upcoming topic. Take a look at this.
Hi Expressions, my name is Noma, and I'm hoping next week you guys can take a look at the free education as it was announced by the president. Hopefully you guys can maybe give us a little bit of information on how they're going to plan on implementing this, and we get to hear how students can further their education.
Sibonge kakhulu for that video, Noma. Remember now, Lepakaya, to keep those videos coming. Now, Ukaya class kanye no Thabiso Bengwa joining us for a performance from all of us here at Expressions. We wish you a spectacular evening going forward. Cutting Edge is up next. Take care.
Adios. Bye.